In 1930, a Harlem crime boss walked into a courtroom and accused the New York Police Department of corruption. She ran an illegal gambling empire. She defied violent mobsters, and she refused to pay tribute to anyone. Within months, officers were removed from duty, and the most dangerous men in New York took notice. Her name was Stephanie St. Clair, and for a time, Harlem answered to her. Fade into archival Harlem streets. She was born in 1886 in Guadeloupe, but in America, she often claimed Martinique. A subtle adjustment, a strategic refinement. Identity, she understood, was negotiable. In 1912, she passed through Ellis Island, another immigrant entering a nation built on ambition. But Harlem was not the promised land. It was crowded, underfunded, watched. The 1920s would become known as the Harlem Renaissance, a cultural explosion of music, literature, and black intellectual power. But beneath the poetry, beneath the trumpet solos, access to capital was restricted. Black residents frequently faced discriminatory lending practices. Insurance companies denied policies. Economic mobility stalled. Opportunity did not disappear. It went underground. Stephanie St. Clair noticed, and she adapted. In 1922, she invested $10,000 of her own savings. The venture was illegal. The enterprise was simple. 3 numbers. The policy game, known as the numbers. Residents wagered small sums on combinations derived from public financial figures. It required no credit check, no collateral, no permission. Every morning, runners moved quietly through Harlem, barbershops, beauty salons, church steps. Cash flowed upward through a tightly managed network. If one runner disappeared, the chain trembled. If a collector failed, discipline followed. And at the top of the pyramid sat Stephanie St. Clair. She was not loud. She was precise. Ledgers balanced, territories assigned, rules enforced. By the mid-1920s, she controlled dozens of collectors and over 40 runners. Harlem called her the policy queen. But her influence extended beyond gambling. She wrote columns in the New York Amsterdam News, advising readers of their legal rights during police searches. She publicly criticized corruption within the vice squad. Reports from the period suggest she funded legal defenses and supported community causes. To some, she was a criminal opportunist. To others, she was a symbol of economic resistance. Power in Harlem was rarely pure. It was negotiated. And negotiation requires leverage. She had it. But visibility invites danger. Jazz fades. The streets darken. Narrator. As the decade advanced, her success became impossible to ignore. Downtown, fortunes were rising in the hands of organized crime syndicates. Prohibition had created empires built on alcohol. Violence was currency. And then, the stock market collapsed. Profits vanished. Desperation spread. White mobsters searching for revenue looked north, toward Harlem. Among them was a man who resolved disputes with kidnapping and execution. His name was Dutch Schultz, and he believed Harlem belonged to him. Schultz did not negotiate first. He intimidated. Collectors were kidnapped. Runners assaulted. Rumors spread quickly. Cooperate or disappear. He demanded tribute. A tax on Harlem's numbers operators. Many complied. Stephanie St. Clair refused. She organized local resistance, encouraged boycotts of businesses aligned with outside syndicates, spoke openly against interference, and in doing so, she escalated the conflict. This was no longer a quiet numbers operation. It was a territorial war. Then came the decision that stunned both allies and enemies. In 1930, she testified before the Seabury Commission, a criminal operator publicly describing bribery within the NYPD. She detailed payments, named officers, explained the system of protection. Contemporary reports indicate her testimony contributed to disciplinary action against multiple officers. The vice squad faced scrutiny. But exposing corruption did not make her safer. It made her dangerous. To the mob and to the police, the war had changed. And so had the stakes. 1935, Harlem was exhausted. Years of intimidation, kidnappings, territorial violence. Stephanie St. Clair had refused tribute. She had exposed corruption. She had survived. But survival is not victory. Because beyond Harlem, something larger was forming. Organized crime in New York was evolving. It was no longer driven by impulse. It was becoming corporate. In October 1935, Dutch Schultz was shot in a Newark restaurant. The attack was widely believed to have been sanctioned by leaders of the Italian-American syndicate, who considered him unstable and reckless. He lingered for nearly 24 hours, delirious, rambling, dying beneath white tablecloths. Word traveled quickly to Harlem. According to contemporary accounts, Stephanie St. Clair sent a telegram to his bedside. It read, "As ye sow, so shall ye reap." No celebration, no spectacle, just scripture. But Schultz's death did not restore independence. It cleared the way for consolidation. At the center of the restructuring stood Lucky Luciano. Luciano envisioned something different. Not chaotic gang wars, but a governing body, a commission. Disputes would be mediated, territories assigned, profit shared. Violence would be strategic, not impulsive. Harlem's numbers racket was profitable, too profitable to leave independent. The new order did not need defiance. It needed cooperation. And this is where the shift began. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson understood the new reality. He had learned discipline under St. Clair. He had enforced her will, but now he saw a different path to survival. Rather than resist the Italian syndicate, he negotiated. Historians generally describe a power shift in the mid-1930s as Bumpy Johnson became the primary intermediary between Harlem operators and the Italian-controlled commission. The arrangement allowed Harlem's numbers game to continue, but a percentage flowed downtown. It was compromise, it was pragmatic, and it was permanent. Stephanie St. Clair had built an independent empire. Bumpy Johnson integrated it into a larger machine. There was no public confrontation, no dramatic overthrow, no final duel. Influence simply moved. Meetings occurred without her. Decisions were made elsewhere. Protection flowed through new channels. She had challenged the police. She had resisted outside takeover, but she would not submit to syndicate structure. And in organized crime, rigidity carries cost. Gradually, her authority narrowed. Her name faded from operational control. The Queen of Harlem was no longer at the center of the board. Yet she did not collapse. She withdrew, invested in real estate, maintained a cultivated European persona, high fashion, precise speech, measured presence. Identity remained her armor. Reports indicate she continued community involvement and advocacy in later years, though no longer as an active racketeer. Harlem changed around her. The Renaissance dimmed. New movements rose. The city hardened. Under Bumpy Johnson's leadership, Harlem's underworld stabilized. He became known as a negotiator, balancing local operators with the Italian commission. Violence did not vanish, but it became controlled, structured, profitable. Where St. Clair had ruled through defiance, Bumpy ruled through alignment. Two philosophies, two eras, one transition. By the 1960s, Stephanie St. Clair lived quietly in central Islip, New York. No entourage, no enforcers, no visible empire. In 1969, she died of natural causes at age 82. There were no gunshots, no headlines, no dramatic finale, just stillness. But silence does not erase influence. How should history remember her? As a criminal? Undeniably, she ran an illegal lottery. As a strategist, she constructed one of Harlem's most disciplined underground networks. As an activist, she publicly exposed police corruption and advocated for community rights. The numbers game brought opportunity to some. It also carried risk, addiction, and the ever-present threat of violence. Morality in 1930s Harlem was rarely absolute. It was contextual. She operated in a system that denied access and built her own. Not legal, not sanctioned, but powerful. Soft jazz returns. Arator, quiet, deliberate. Walk through Harlem today. The music is different. The storefronts have changed. But history lingers. For a brief chapter in American urban life, A Caribbean immigrant engineered influence in a city that offered her little protection. She confronted organized crime, exposed corruption within law enforcement, and forced powerful institutions to respond. Then she stepped aside, because power does not disappear. It evolves. After chaos came structure, after defiance came consolidation, and after the queen came the commission. History often remembers the men who fired the guns. It rarely remembers the woman who calculated the odds. Stephanie St. Land. Claire understood something fundamental. If access to capital is denied, someone will create an alternative. Whether society calls it enterprise or crime depends on who controls the narrative.